Good afternoon, traders, and welcome to Phoenix Blue's daily update. I hope you're all very well today. My name is Nishal Patel, and I'm going to be conducting today's Phoenix Blue daily update. Today's Tuesday, September the 19th of September. Hope you're again all very well. Just having a quick look at the economic data that has been released over the course of today. Two key pieces of information or data having been released today. First, starting off with the monetary policy meeting minutes being released on the Australian dollar in the very early hours of this morning. The key information that we need to take away from the release of those minutes really was the reluctance of the central bank in Australia of the appreciation of their domestic or local currency, which is obviously the Australian dollar. That being said, the Australian dollar has been one of the strongest currency pairs over the course of today. Definitely over the course of the Asian session and the European session, we've seen a fairly strong push on the side of the Australian dollar. That being said, the New Zealand dollar has probably had as an equally as big a push over the course of today. We have had GDT prices come out about an hour and a half ago. And for anyone that doesn't understand what GDT is, it stands for the Global Dairy Trade, and the price index really does track or commonly related dairy prices for common goods associated on selling on the marketplace. That being said, the dairy trade constitutes to a large proportion of the income in New Zealand, so please take that into account. Something else that's going to be released later on this tonight, I would say, is the current account at 11:45 p.m. That's British summertime. There's time to quote in British summertime, so that's something else to look at. But we do also have GDP data coming out on the side of later on tomorrow, and let's also not forget there are parliamentary elections running this week, so it's probably not the best or the safest trade right now. New Zealand dollar. We have also had a mixed bag of data coming out on the US. We can see building permits came out slightly better than expected, but they were slightly revised. So slightly mixed bag of the data coming out, including the current account status, where we've got a slight deficit from imports to exports, that being showing at 123 billion to 11.5 billion quoted. And housing starts came in a little above expected as well. So a slight mixed bag of data on the side of the US, but let's not forget the key news that that everyone should be looking forward to, and that is going to be coming out is tomorrow. It's the key news for us is the FOMC statement and the interest rate potential interest rate hikes, or what we're going to divulge from those interest rate hikes. Now, many of us are thinking that there is going to be a hike at some point over the course, potentially now or maybe next month. From the sounds of it, we are going to be looking potentially at it later on in the year, but we will only really understand once we get to see those dot plots. So those dot plots are going to be key for us to understand what is happening and when. There is also another area that we should be looking towards. Obviously, we have spoken about the parliamentary elections in New Zealand. Something else we should be aware of as traders is the UN meeting. And we did have President Donald Trump speaking at that UN meeting. And as always, he has been very boisterous in his mannerisms and has vowed to utterly destroy North Korea if they pose a threat to the US. So he's obviously trying to gather as much support there in that UN meeting as possible. There were also some threats or some conclusions drawn on Venezuela, which also is a big talking point considering the amount of natural resources they have within Venezuela. But we know that right now their government, or the current government right now, is not very stable. So please be aware of that. So now what we can do is we're going to turn our attention to the charts and see how the markets have evolved. First and foremost, we're just going to have a quick look at the dollar index right now. Dollar index floating at 91.60. Not really too much change as is expected. Obviously, all eyes glued to the FOMC statement and FOMC tomorrow, and see what the Fed does. So really not too much change on the side of the greenback, and that would be saying that we've had a slight appreciation on the euro. Having a look at this on the weekly time frame right now, currently floating at 1.1985. Just moving on to this daily time frame, we can see having slightly lifted off towards the middle of last week off that 20 moving average, having tested a slightly lower price at the mid 1.18s, and then right now floating at 119.86, having tested that 1.2 earlier on today, but failing to break through over the course of today. The Japanese yen, on the other hand, as we can see, we're looking at a what looks to be, if I just move over to this weekly time frame, should be able to see that this has been a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 week high on the Japanese yen versus the US dollar here. Right now floating at 111.52. Have seen some slight, I would say, and the daily time frame looking like it's going to finish off the European session as a doji bar, but let's not forget we do have some hours left before the US session comes to a close as well. But if I just move over to an hourly time frame, what you would have seen over the course of today has definitely been some resistance off the top, and really not being able to push on that strongly off that, and we should be able to draw a nice clean trend line straight off these highs on this hourly time frame. You can see over the course of the last few hours taking a slight dip there, the yen versus the USD, and then coming back ever so much. So over the last few days hasn't been doing too well at all. Moving on to the Australian dollar, we can see the relative strength the Australian dollar has built up over the course of today. Has broken that 0.800 level, so has, well, I wouldn't say pounded through that, and we will be able to see that on an intraday time frame, but having started well below that and made its ascent, has taken its time to break through that 8,000 mark, as we see on this hourly time frame, but is just about above it, or 14 pips above it right now. Moving on to the sterling. Now the sterling took a slight dip over the course of the European Open, especially off the back of the Governor of Bank of England comments yesterday on potential interest rate hikes and how they may be few and far between. His exact words, if I'm not mistaken, were they're going to be staggered and they're going to be limited. So that being said, and with inflation riding well over 2%, looks to be over 2.2% right now, we saw an immediate sell-off on the sterling this morning. Has recovered somewhat, right now floating at 1.3517. Has floated on an intraday basis, has floated below that 1.35 level more than it stayed above it, but has definitely dipped below that today on several occasions, and we've definitely taken some great shorts from earlier on this morning. Moving on forward to the Canadian dollar, we can see after the Canadian dollar losing ground against the greenback over the course of the last 10 odd days, coming down and having hit that low of 1.2080. But right now just resting off, or just kissing that 20-day moving average on this daily time frame, and then coming off it. Not too much movement over the course of today on the Canadian dollar, but definitely the opposite can be said on the New Zealand dollar versus the USD. We've seen definite strength on the side of the New Zealand dollar over the course of today. That we haven't seen a range which has been as large as what we saw yesterday, but certainly looks bullish, which many people probably would have thought the complete opposite of, especially after yesterday's high test that we saw off that 382 Fib level. But right now floating at 0.7324. Moving on forward and having a look at a commodity just before we wrap up has been the descent of gold spot. Just having a look at the price of just sitting, or I should say just under 1,310 US dollars per troy ounce, exactly sitting at 1308.73 circa right now, having had a very sharp fall over the last 2 weeks, after hitting that high of around 1350, 1349 if I'm not mistaken, and then falling really sharply down 50 odd dollars. Just slight movement on the bullish side on the price of gold, but not too much. Again, what we should expect to see is most certainly see some movement on the side of gold with the US dollar volatility that we'll most definitely see midway through the American session tomorrow. Okay guys, as always, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to pop us an email at info@PhoenixBlue if you'd like to know how we trade and how we develop our charts. Obviously this video has been created for just a quick update and a quick synopsis of what's going on in the marketplace. Occasionally we do provide videos, and we will be providing many videos on our analysis and what trades we're potentially taking. So please stay glued to our website. Alternatively, I would urge you to follow our Telegram channel, which was listed at the start of this presentation, of this video, as well as on all of our social media channels, including our Instagram and Facebook. So until tomorrow guys, happy trading. Bye bye.